Yes, hello and welcome to another episode of Film Review. Today I review one Sopranos. Lots of people are watching Sopranos currently because there is a film coming out, and I believe it's got a different name, but it's based on The Sopranos. The main character is Tony Soprano, and he is played by Michael Gandolfini. Michael is the son of James Gandolfini, who was Tony Soprano in The Sopranos television show. It was on HBO, and it was, I think, 6 seasons. And I should disclose, I had seen bits and parts of it prior to rewatching it, as the New York Times is saying that everyone's doing, all the young people. It's saying that there was an article about it. Anyway, so I'm not sure how true that is. I look around on college campuses, many are saying, screw the Saints, we can't pray to the Saints, yada, yada, yada. And then some are like, well, we're Catholic and we're rich, and so I don't see the problem. And I think that's kind of what's going on. There's like, usually when things are conflicting, the people with the most wealth tend to stay clear of the most havoc. Um, and I don't really have a dog in the fight in this one. I not very religious. Um, and my family is very diverse, so we have like all kinds of religion in our family. And so I can't really pick one and say, "Oh, that's my team." It's not who I am. I wasn't raised that way. But um, anyway, so the movie is actually called Many Saints of Newark, which is a city in New Jersey, and I think that's kind of where the Anthony Soprano, the character, I think that's where he grew up, is like Newark or around Newark. And so The Sopranos follows Tony Soprano, played by James Gandolfini. He tragically passed away um, maybe like 5 years ago. I think he had some heart issues. I mean, he was a little old, right? Maybe like in his 60s. Not that old, though, really, if you think about the average life expectancy in America. But he was a pretty good actor, and he did this role incredibly well. And like I said, I had seen bits and pieces of this show, bits and parts uh, of the show, and I was never like a huge fan, but I thought it was pretty funny at times. I think like the character of Paulie Walnuts and James Van Sant, um, who actually is I think he's plays rhythm guitar in the Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. James Van Sant, yeah. But he's a pretty good actor, but although he's like really outspoken politically, not a lot of backlash associated with that because he tends to be more conservative. And like Seth Meyers did on he did a little bit on him on the monologue last night, saying, "Well, you should just go back to the E Street Band, guy. You don't know what you're talking about, politics." And Seth Meyers, whatever, say what you want about him. He has some funny monologues. I actually knew the writer that wrote those monologues a while back, but his show's okay. I mean, he's obviously very liberal. He's from like Vermont, right? So, um, whether you agree with him or not, he makes some points. Same can be said for is it James Van Sant or Gus Van Sant? I don't know his name, but is he actually in the movie? He might be in the film. So Ray Liotta's in the film, the guy from Goodfellas, the main character from Goodfellas. That's pretty cool. Um, Ray Liotta, of course, Henry Hill in Goodfellas. And so what I gather is like obviously Sopranos took place in New Jersey, and like I said, I had seen parts of it throughout the years. I mean, it was kind of before my time. I mean, when I was kind of coming into my own, starting to really get into film and TV, and um, this is well before I started to even think about writing. But the shows that were kind of on were like, I would say there was a couple, but I mean, you think of Doug Ian, of course, and Entourage. And you think of several others, but Sopranos was one that was kind of a little before my time. Like I think that it might have had its last season when I was like a freshman in high school. So, my parents would not let me watch that. Um, and it's pretty graphic. I said it was funny before. Like I think the parts that I'd seen, like in college, like late nights, just kind of on HBO, nothing to watch, and or HBO Go, whatever it is, on demand, and there would be like, okay, like I'll check the show out. It's got a cool theme song, and it was okay. Like I said, I thought parts of it were funny. Certain characters, they just like kind of over the top, and it was like I can't talk today. Weird. No, but it was a decent show, and I think it follows Tony Soprano. He's this gangster, right? He's the head of this crime family in New Jersey, and they're very like, I guess they've been around for years. His uncle or his father was the previous crime boss. Who knows? And there's like different families in New York and New Jersey, and he's like the main guy in North Jersey, and it's a big Italian area. What can you say? It's like there's the businesses usually, like to my knowledge, like from my time there, it's like usually like okay, there would be like a Jewish owner, but it would be run by Italians. Maybe that wasn't true in North Jersey. I'm not sure. Maybe this is just parts of Brooklyn and Long Island, but it seems like there's this but the crime I think was mostly but you don't hear about it too much, and sometimes you see like the New York Post, you see stories of gangsters, and like I've never heard of this guy, and they just live quietly in Staten Island, right? And no one's ever heard of them, but when the Post does a story on them because some crazy death happens, somebody gets ran over outside their home or whatever, and it's just like, wow, that's great. So it's kind of going on still, maybe under the behind the scenes a little bit. And that can be, by the way, said with a lot of things in society at this current time, as I take it. But um, I think with the movie coming out, a lot of people are watching Sopranos again. I think it's a good show. It shows kind of that culture of behind the scenes, um, organized crime. Organized crime is, as they say, kind of always going to exist in some way or another, and it's not good, and no one wishes it. I mean, good people don't obviously wish it. Some people strive to be it. I think some kids grow up like, I want to be a gangster, and they kind of go to school, but they're not really paying attention. They're more concerned about how to do gangster things. Sometimes that even follows them up to higher education, which is crazy. And I've just kind of realized that maybe in the past few years, because when I was in school, I figured that if you were in college at all, like you wanted to do something sort of uplifting in a kind fashion. I didn't realize that there's another half of that, and there's people that, you know, there's like you got to hide behind something, right? If you're doing some kind of devious activity, and I think it was not clear to me before, but I think it is now that there's still that out there. That's like people that want to just go and get their finance degree, and what they're doing while they're getting it is not really so much paying attention. Maybe they grew up with finance, they don't need to pay attention. Certainly one thing I talked about that years ago when I realized that, but because it is a language, it's like a language. Like I grew up speaking English, and it's like kind, whatever, polite society English, and but some folks don't grow up speaking that polite society English. They grow up speaking a different tongue that's English maybe, but they just communicate kind of odd and just different. And like for example, I have a bunch of songs on my iPhone, and I wouldn't expect that people would look at a song name and be like, "Oh, he's trying to tell us something." Like that's crazy to me. So because like I grew up speaking literal English, polite society English, and if I'm listening to a song in the gym that has no effect on my life, or at least it shouldn't, right? So it's very strange. And I'm 29 years old, and I think a lot of people on this campus that I'm currently at, I think they're much younger. And maybe that's a kind of immaturity issue too. But it's just interesting what you live and you learn. And the gangster movies, the gangster shows, as this one was, I believe, the highest watched show on HBO at the time. And it was surpassed only by a lot of folks watched that show with like the weird Middle Ages people. A lot of people love this show. I never could get into it. And maybe I should get it. I mean, I probably could get into it, right? I just never really tried. I just thought it was kind of a little before relevant, um, civilized society goes. And it was. I don't know. I don't know what it was called. It's gonna drive me nuts. Game of Thrones, right? I never got into it. Never understood it. Thought it was kind of strange. I was working briefly like at this restaurant, and there was like an old guy that worked there, and he was telling, he's like, you see some real nice, Hooters in this. You got to watch it, man. And I'm like, that's the last reason I'm gonna watch a TV show. I just maybe at that time I was more active in the arena of women and relationships, so I didn't need to. Looking back, I mean, now it's like maybe I should watch it, but that's neither here nor there. I just I never got it. I thought it was kind of strange, kind of barbaric, right? I don't get into stuff like that. It's just not me. And the same can be said with Sopranos, a little barbaric, and it's like in the current time. I mean, I guess late '90s, early 2000s in North Jersey, but I mean, and listen, I've been to Staten Island, had many dinners in Staten Island, um, and like I'm watching the first season, and I'm kind of going back and watching it now with a clear mind. It's not an end of the night. I had been out, and now I'm just kind of trying to wind down type of show. Now it's like I'm kind of focused, like I realize the show is more relevant than I may have thought before, so I'm actually kind of focused on it. And so there was like a dialogue between one of Tony's, I guess, capos, right? One of his main guys. And he's like, "Oh, I'll take care of it, cut him up in Staten Island." And I'm like, "Whoa, does this go on in Staten Island?" I mean, Staten Island's kind of a nice suburban borough. It doesn't really, but you could see how, like I was talking about before, with even like Los Angeles, like you have anytime something can be so good, it could also be so bad, and you just never expect it, especially if it's a nice neighborhood. And it's kind of like the concept Mike David Lynch suggested with the film Blue Velvet. It's like it could look amazing, and it's like this 1950s classic suburban home, and but just like the activity that's going on there is bizarre. So that's Blue Velvet, and that's the beauty of David Lynch. I think that's his best work, personally. But Sopranos is really good. David Chase, great writer, great director. 6 seasons on HBO at this time was kind of unheard of. I mean, I think only The Wire had done something similar, but until maybe Game of Thrones. But this was, I mean, a really well watched show. People loved it. The movie coming out, like I said, kind of crazy. And Michael Gandolfini was telling, I think Jimmy Fallon last night, he said, because I was a kid then and my father was playing Tony Soprano, I never actually was able to watch the show because I was a kid and they didn't let me watch it. So that's what he said on Jimmy Fallon last night. I thought it was interesting. So he's going into this film playing the role of his father in his father's younger years, and he's never even seen the show. But I guess right before the casting or whatever, he was able to watch it or whatever. It's kind of what I'm doing now. And it's kind of cool. I mean, listen, crime is prevalent in almost any walk of life. Doesn't matter if Italian, German, Irish, many different sections of crime. It doesn't discriminate. I mean, this just happens to focus on an Italian crime family, I think. Um, and listen, he's got. You see right away, he's got. It was. I guess he was the father in Home Alone. Was a cop. The father in Home Alone, right? Kevin McArthur. His dad from Home Alone, one and two. I forget the name of the actor, but he's a good actor. He plays a cop in North Jersey. So Tony, it's like one of Tony's trusted guys to get him like the inside scoop. And so that's kind of so far a theme because he has him spy on his therapist. So this guy's like following his therapist home, and his therapist it's a woman played by what is her name? I think she's in Goodfellas. She's the Lorraine Bracco, I believe, and she's the female lead in Goodfellas, which is a great film. Ray Liotta, of course, and was Henry Hill's wife, Karen, right? And anyway, so she's the therapist. She goes out to dinner with some lawyer, right? And she's kind of very polite society. She's got an Italian name, but she's not. She's not a part of that lifestyle. She's not married to a gangster or whatever. She's a single young professional woman, and and she's getting pulled over after her date with some lawyer. The lawyer's going to jail because this cop that Tony paid off literally to spy on her. And I guess Tony was like, don't touch her. But the guy that she was with was like kind of beat the crap out of him and taken to jail. So it's interesting. But and this is kind of stuff that goes on everywhere. I feel like it's not just North Jersey, but I think to get people interested, I think you have to kind of make it set in a place like this, right? Because there are a lot of Italians, and a lot of people automatically kind of go there when they think of high density of Italians. Like there must be some kind of criminal activity, I think because you look at all the films, they're all like Italian gangster films. You don't see too many. You see a couple Irish gangster films, maybe, but it's about it. And so I think that's how you have to do it as a writer. You have to kind of set it there, regardless of like David Chase. I'm pretty sure he might be Italian actually, but I don't know how Italian he is, right? It just, um, anyways. So that's what you have to do. And there's even like in the first few episodes of the first season, his Tony Soprano, the main character's nephew, is Michael. What is his real name? It's gonna drive me nuts. Michael Imperioli or something. Imperioli. And he's talking about. He's like, well, if you don't give me a made guy, which I think a made guy is like what you is when you, I don't know. They make it so you're like you're protected, right? You're a made guy. I guess that's what that means. And so he's like working for Tony, and he's like, well, if you don't make me a made guy, I got a guy out in Hollywood. He said he could write a thing about me, and I could put it in a film. And then I thought to myself, and I'm like, you know, I've been to Hollywood. I've never thought about writing a gangster film because I don't know that lifestyle. But here's a guy that does, because he's a character. I mean, not in real life, but he's a character in The Sopranos. So he's kind of threatening Tony, like, if you don't do this for me, like I'll just leave and go to Hollywood and write about this. And he's like, don't you ever write, And he's like, so it's just the whole thing. And that's interesting because you do see a lot of kind of gangster films or short films, or even like on Netflix, films that aren't as good as Goodfellas, as big as The Godfather or Goodfellas, but you see it. You see it. There's like obviously an effort out there amongst writers um, to maybe write about, especially if they're Italian and from that part of the country, Northeast, that there might be some effort there for them to kind of like put all their life experiences into writing. And I'm not Italian, and I don't have any of those life experiences, but I think as a writer, if I was and did, that would be interesting. If I didn't, but I mean, I think if you're in that lifestyle and you're that close to Tony Soprano, I mean, you definitely think twice about going to LA, going to Hollywood. At least I would. I think that would be, you know, because it's kind of like you go, you die. That's in those families, especially the way the show's portrayed. Like you probably don't want to do that, but so that's one of the themes so far. I'm gonna keep watching it. It's interesting. Like I said, I kind of watching it with a clear head now, and before maybe I was on Adderall a lot. Maybe I was just coming home a little hammered. These are like really young undergrad years when I would watch it. I think some of my roommates we watched it back my old place, and yeah, it's just one of these HBO on demand shows, but you don't think of it like how our parents probably thought of it because they might have watched it live. They might have watched it live, and for them it's much bigger series because maybe they've had some exposure to groups like that. I think the guys I knew, their parents were not Italian. Their parents were not from North Jersey. Their parents were not from the Northeast. So it was not like it didn't hit home, but I'm sure like, being in the business world or whatever for a certain time will give you exposure to these sorts of people because you have a better understanding of what's out there. And I think when you're 20, 21, 22 years old, as we were back then, watching this late at night, it doesn't really, besides the action and the drama, it doesn't really have any, we can't relate to this, right? And now, so I'm going back and I'm watching it. Not that I can relate to it better now, but I can understand it more because I'm clear-headed, clear-minded, and I've lived in different places. So I definitely think in certain cities, there's definitely groups of people that take power, and I'm not sure those people are oftentimes, but I can kind of observe and kind of like make rough estimates, kind of thing. And so I don't know. It's one of those things. But another theme. He keeps going back to his therapist. He's having a lot of anxiety, and I think the New York Times posts. And I don't read the New York Times. I don't read the New York Times a whole lot, right? Let's put it that way. But I think in this particular article, um, they did talk about how young people were watching it because they wanted to get an idea for the movie coming out. Of course, The Many Saints of Newark, and I think it's out tomorrow. Anyway, so with that being said, with the young people watching it, one of the themes that they're looking for that we and the people a little younger than me perhaps will pick up is that life at that time, and this is before the financial crisis, mind you, of 2008, kind of the crash as it's called, in certain places where they can openly speak of it. Um, you know, there is like a decline in the American ways of making money of old, and you see that early on in the first season. They're having trouble with their waste management business. There's some issues with kind of ways to get money, and RICO's a thing. RICO's like this FBI. I think it's FBI. It could be IRS. I don't know. It's like with internet records, right? Ways to get information, the government. So just all these tracking ways, and so these gangsters are having a really tough time of doing business the way they used to, and so they have to kind of transform their business or keep up with the times of modern technology. And that's a theme early on, and that's a theme in life itself. And but you see it in Sopranos because the way it's painted, like I'm saying, you have to put something somewhere in a context where people will be interested enough to really understand it. And this was before Facebook, but Facebook changed a lot after 2007. Just read a book by Thomas Friedman. I'm just saying, um, in this particular time in North Jersey, I think you automatically see late 90s, early 2000s. They're struggling. They're struggling to make money the way they used to. And Tony's going back to his therapist saying, I think the golden years were behind us. It's just like, it's just sort of this classic, I don't know, neo American way to put things in a context, but in a very real context. And so I think it's important, maybe watch it. I don't know what to say, but this is something that I think it's a very important theme is keeping up with the times. There's decline in the economy at large, so at the micro level, they're having to kind of dig deep and figure out new kind of schemes and things that even once you get to 2008 will be looked at differently because healthcare, and there's a little bit there. They try to do something with somebody's healthcare policy because they know a doctor, right? So there's just all these different things, and maybe some of them still go on today. Probably not. Probably not. Just because, like I said, the RICOs and the way the Healthcare Act is, healthcare reform. So I think 2008 changed a lot of things in retrospect, but I think if you're on the other side of that, if you were maybe with the people that enacted those laws in 2008, I think you might have a way around it. But I think those are the people too that are so in deep with the government that you can't consider them gangsters at that point. They're politicians. They're legislators. I mean, so who are the gangsters now? Is what I'm saying. And like I said, they probably always were this, but I think when you grow up, you think, oh, Italians a gangster, whatever. But no, it's not that. I think that's just how you have to write it. I think you have to write it in a certain context so that people will follow and understand. So that's my take on the first half of The Sopranos. Now, I could be wrong on this. I mean, I don't know anything about this kind of lifestyle, but like I said, I think we can all relate to it and see how it fits in to the fabric of society now and different cultures, multi-ethnic, multicultural, Italian, Jewish, Catholic, Christian, um, you know, German, Irish, whatever. We can see this is just one way that David Chase had to put it for The Sopranos, and so people will be interested and watch it, and we can think, oh, it's so far from us. It's just those Italians in North Jersey, right? So anyway, give it a try. It's season one Sopranos. Movie comes out tomorrow, I guess. The Many Saints of Newark, and these aren't finance guys, but are they?